All right, we are live and recording. We are back. So, hope you guys are having a great day and hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving if you are listening or watching this. Obviously, this will be uploaded or recorded, whatever, after Thanksgiving. So, hope the last podcast episode, if you listen to it, really helped you to put into perspective of how you can approach Thanksgiving and these holidays in general while still enjoying yourself without going overboard, gaining a bunch of weight. The last video and podcast I uploaded about this got a ton of feedback from my one-on-one clients of just how helpful it was in going through client check-ins. This week, the week after Thanksgiving, literally everybody like perfectly maintained their weight all week and reported just feeling really good, not feeling overly stuffed, feeling like they, enjoyed themselves too and didn't feel restricted, but also didn't feel like they went overboard unnecessarily too. So loved all of that. So hope you guys are having a great week. It's a weird week this week, getting back into like an entirely normal routine after not only just the holiday last week, but even from our trip to Disney we took a couple of weeks ago. Like, I feel like it's been 3 weeks since I've been able to get back into a normal, consistent kind of work schedule, work routine since like the week of like November 10th or 11th, whenever that Monday started. That was the week leading up to us leaving for Disney because we left that Saturday, November 16th. And so that whole week, while it was normal Monday through Friday, I was, catching up on a lot of work, trying to get ahead of a lot of work and all this stuff because I'd be taking a week off, right, through Disney. So that week was kind of weird. And then the Disney week was obviously weird with work. Was lucky and grateful enough to be able to take a break from client check-ins that week. All of my clients, I communicated with them that I'd be in Disney that week. And still did some work with answering messages and stuff to clients, but no like formal client check-in. So that was kind of weird. Doing that, didn't record any podcasts that week. And then the following week, we have 3 days and then we have Thanksgiving. And so it's been like weird. And also like December is probably going to be or feel a little bit weird too, because I think Christmas falls on maybe a Wednesday, either a Thursday, Wednesday or Tuesday, sometime in the middle of the week. And then, New Year's the following week, I think falls on like a Wednesday or Tuesday too. Let me pull it up. Yeah, so Christmas is on a Wednesday, and then New Year's Day is on a Wednesday too. So yeah, the holidays falling right in the middle of the week have made things weird. But anyways, kind of off my schedule, which whenever I am off on my routine a little bit, I always feel a little bit more anxious. So it feels good this week to kind of feel like I'm getting back to my normal schedule. And speaking of being off schedule, our son, he just turned 2 years old, and he's been, since we got back from Disney, I don't know if it's been like the change in schedule for him too, of just having a whole week of not going to daycare, a whole week of waking up and going to bed at slightly different times, a whole week of being with my wife and I, versus like, normally he's going to daycare for most of the day, Monday through Friday. But he's been like extra clingy. He has not been enjoying getting dropped off at daycare, which is not normal for him. And his sleep also has been like shifted a little bit, where he's waking up a little bit earlier, having trouble going to sleep. Normally, like his bed, his crib is like his happy place. Lay him down. He'll lay there for like an hour and then fall asleep peacefully, wake up. And even when he wakes up, he'll wake up and just lay there awake for a long period of time if he has to, and just like enjoys it. But now he's been little, I don't know if it's scared because we're not sleeping in the same room with him anymore like we were on vacation, but hasn't been enjoying the bedtime or even the waking up process as much. But hopefully he'll be getting back into his kind of routine too this week. But wanted to come on here and talk about the trip to Disney, and specifically how I lost pretty much 4 to 5 pounds over a span of roughly 8 or 9 days that we were kind of gone. I put this on my Instagram story if anyone would be interested in hearing about like what I did to do this. And a lot of you guys did respond and say, "Hey, I want to know like what you did because vacations are like my kryptonite. I always gain weight on vacation, or I always feel like afraid of gaining weight. So how did you even lose this much weight on vacation?" So we're gonna dive into that with this video, with this episode. Disney, for one, just want to say, was amazing. I went to Disney with my wife. My wife and I, just us two, went a couple of years ago before my son was born, and it was a lot of fun. And that was my first experience with Disney. She had gone when she was a kid, but this was my first one like 2 years ago. And it was a lot of fun. It was really cool. And like, so glad that her and I went, just us two. So, I kind of could enjoy it and kind of like really see everything, without like having, a child to like watch constantly and, run around with and everything for my first time. But this time going, like, it is just so different going with your kid, especially like, him being 2 years old, where like, sure, he doesn't understand like everything, but he does understand a lot and can recognize some characters and everything. Like, it was so cool, so special seeing him just have so much fun on some of the rides, and being able to meet Mickey and Minnie Mouse, and his interactions with them. And it was really cool. So, and I'm sure, if you're a parent and you've ever taken them anywhere, maybe it's not Disney, but anywhere where, you kind of experienced it as a kid and now you get to kind of live through it with them. I'm sure, you kind of know what I'm describing. So it was really cool. But went on, or left around 202 or 204 and 205 pounds. I was kind of consistently weighing around 204, 205, depending on the day. And I left that Saturday, November 16th. We came back November 23rd, that following Saturday. And that Sunday, when I weighed myself, I was like 199.9. And then that next Monday, so a day later, I think I was like 200 point something, maybe even 201. So I had lost about 4 to 5 pounds from like the day I left to the day after I came back. So how in the world did I lose 4 to 5 pounds while on a vacation? Because I was not keeping track of my steps. I actually brought my Oura Ring, which is how I keep track of my steps at home. But I decided not to plug it in once it died. I just didn't feel like having to plug it in every few days. So I was like, I'm not aiming for a step goal. Like, I'm not going to go on an extra walk, in the evening or morning to try to hit a certain step count. So I'm like, me tracking it isn't really necessarily that important. So decided not to plug that in. So I wasn't tracking my steps. Didn't do any workouts or any training sessions from that time period. Like, I had my last workout Friday before we left, had my first workout that Sunday when we came back. So basically 8, maybe 9-ish days of, I think it comes out to like 8 days of not working out, no structured workouts at all. And did not track my food at all. Not one bit. Never pulled out my FitnessPal or my food tracker or anything. And lost 4 to 5 pounds while I was gone. Now, I did gain a little bit back over the next week, which I'll talk about why that happened. But 4 to 5 pounds in a week is a huge amount of actual weight loss and change on the scale. Not all of that was body fat. Like I said, I gained a few of that back, which I think was some water retention for some reasons I'll talk about. But I likely did lose probably at least a pound of fat over vacation, if not maybe slightly more. And that even is still like huge to do. Like, losing a pound of fat on a normal week when you're not on vacation is like huge progress. So if you're doing that on vacation with not tracking your food, not working out, like that's pretty significant. So here are some things that I did while I was gone that will hopefully give you some tips of things that you can do while you're gone on vacation, on a trip. Maybe it's even just a few days you're out of town. You could even use some of these tips, and some of them kind of overlap with the things we talked about with Thanksgiving last week. But you can use these in basically any day or week or weekend where you are not in your normal routine, you're not tracking your food, you're not getting your normal workouts in, to still make progress, or at bare minimum, just not gain weight while you're not tracking your food. So number one is I really prioritize protein for breakfast. And really at every meal, I prioritize protein, but specifically at breakfast was a big one because I knew that when we were out and about and when we got lunch somewhere or we got dinner somewhere, that I would have less control over my food sources. Just because, like some menus might not have certain things that I'm looking for at the time. So like, you obviously are limited in options and you don't have unlimited options of like what you want to order. So I really wanted to prioritize and make sure I got a lot of protein to start my day, which is also going to help you to feel full for most of your day if you really start your breakfast with a high protein breakfast. Like a lot of people will start their breakfast with just like a granola bar or a banana or pancakes or waffles. And those are very carb heavy breakfasts, not really a lot of protein, which isn't really going to fill you up for very long. So I prioritize protein. And by the way, just for context too, we stayed at the campground there. My in-laws, they have a camper, and it was really nice because they drove the camper down while my wife and I and my son, we flew down. So we kind of met them there, which was really nice. So because we stayed in the camper, breakfast, we really could control what we ate since we could buy some groceries beforehand and have them there. So for breakfast, I had pretty much every single morning, I had a protein bar, which was around like 170 to 200 calories, around like close to 20-ish grams of protein. I had 1 cup of Oikos Triple Zero yogurt, which was about 100 calories or so and around 15 grams of protein. So I was getting probably 35-ish grams of protein at each breakfast for sure. And that was pretty much my breakfast. I think I had a little bit of fruit the one morning too, but that was pretty much it. I was like, I'm going to prioritize protein mostly at my breakfast, not going to go crazy on the carbs or anything else. Now, the yogurt does have some carbs in it. The protein bar will have some carbs too. So it's not like I had just straight protein. I wouldn't recommend that. I would recommend some kind of carbs in there. But if your protein source is like yogurt or a protein bar that has some carbs already built into it, then you probably don't need to like be conscious about adding in extra carbs on there because you're already getting some mixed in there. So really try to emphasize protein for my breakfast. A couple hundred or a few hundred calories with that, with getting at least 30 to 35 grams of protein minimum at each breakfast. And that was kind of my breakfast meal every single morning. And I prioritize protein at my other meals too. So, and I would always try to eat the protein first. Like there were multiple meals that we went to, like some of them we went to, there was this one place, I can't remember what it's called, but you sit in like a car, like a drive-in movie theater pretty much, which is really cool. And I got a burger and fries for this meal. And I made sure to eat my burger first. And I actually left quite a bit of my fries on my plate at the end because I really didn't need to eat all of them. So one kind of hack or tip is like making sure like whatever you're ordering has a big protein source and then eating that first and then being okay with leaving some of the carbs left on your plate afterwards and realizing you don't actually need to eat that whole portion of French fries. So that was one strategy I did, was just eating the protein first and then moving on to the carbs and trying to eat slower and like consciously trying to leave some of my carbs on my plate because I knew like the portion size they give you is bigger than probably what you need. Another thing, or another place we went to was this kind of like, I don't even know how to describe it, but it was, I don't think it was like a Mexican place, but they had things that you could choose like a rice bowl with meat, with some brisket, I think in there, some chicken in there. You can add beans and this and that. And when I ordered that, I ordered extra protein. So I ordered like double meat or double chicken on that to really like boost up the protein source of that meal. And then when I was eating that rice bowl, I specifically would not entirely just eat all the protein in the bowl first and then move on to like the rice and beans and everything. But as I was picking through, I was making sure each bite had like a good amount of protein and like was okay with leaving some of the rice and the beans kind of in the bowl and maybe not finishing all of that. So that was another just simple way that I was prioritizing protein at each meal by just with each bite trying to get like two scoops of like protein in there while like being okay if the carbs kind of got left over. Another example of this, of how I prioritize protein, was there was this one Italian place we went to, and I ordered chicken parmesan, which is like a breaded fried chicken breast, which I'm not, or I don't know if it was fried actually. Let me take that back, but it was breaded. It might have been baked, but usually when you add breading to like chicken, it's going to add extra calories. It's going to add extra calories from carbs. So for that meal, I knew I had protein with the chicken breast. I knew I was getting some extra carbs and probably some extra fats from the breading. And then I had like this side of spaghetti noodles with it that comes with the chicken parmesan. And I actually didn't eat any of my spaghetti noodles. Like the piece of chicken was pretty big. And, you know, we did have, I think, some bread for like kind of an appetizer. I had a big like side of spaghetti noodles with this. And like I knew I was getting protein from the chicken. I knew I was getting some carbs and fats from the breading on there. I had some bread for an appetizer. Also had a drink with it, alcoholic drink. So I knew I was getting like quite a few calories from these other sources, getting some carbs and fats from these other sources too. So I knew I didn't need this whole plate of spaghetti noodles. And also it kind of helped that I'm really not a huge fan of spaghetti type noodles anyway. So like it wasn't something that like I love that I was turning down. But I ate the chicken patty, had some bread, maybe like a couple of bites of the spaghetti noodles, and then I was just done. I was like, you know, I'm not going to stuff myself with these spaghetti noodles because one, I know I'm getting plenty of calories from these other things. Two, I'm feeling satisfied. Like, am I full stuffed? No, but I'm feeling satisfied and don't really need to eat more. And like the spaghetti noodles, it's not something that I actually really love anyway. So I'd be kind of just stuffing myself, overly fulfilling, you know, my stomach with something that I don't even really think tastes like that great or I'm not in love with. So that was just another example of like how I prioritize the protein by just eating the big chicken breast that came with it and not really eating the rest of the spaghetti noodles, or at least going to the spaghetti noodles second and eating those last. So really try to prioritize protein at each meal. Tip number 2, what I did was I really limited snacks unless it was like a hell yes. And I've heard other people like use this phrase before. You know, if it's not a hell yes, then it's a hell no, or whatever you want to say. But basically, it's where like if somebody presents a snack to you and you're like, this is pretty good, like I kind of like these, but you're really not that hungry, and you're not like, oh my God, this is going to taste amazing, then just turn it down. Like you probably don't need it. It's probably not worth like the extra calories if it's something that you don't really love. There was, you know, a night where we went and got ice cream and I was like really craving ice cream. I was like, oh, ice cream's going to taste amazing. So I had ice cream as a snack. There was another day where we were in Magic Kingdom and we got this, some kind of like, I think it was chocolate chip, chocolate brownie cookie or something. I was like, oh my God, that's going to taste so good. And I had that as a snack. So I wasn't turning down every single snack, but if it wasn't something where I'm like, oh my God, this is going to taste really good, I'm really excited for it, and it was just like, you know, just random things here and there, I was like, I'm just going to stick to my meals. And this is where so many people rack up their calories at home, but also like when they're traveling on vacation too, is just snacks they're eating in between their meals when they're really not that hungry. And especially snacks that like you're really not that excited about, you're just kind of eating because it's there. So if you can stick to just 3 meals a day, and then maybe like one snack every day or one snack every other day, depending on like what's presented to you and if it is a hell yes or not, then you're going to really help yourself with keeping your calorie intake from going overboard. So that's a big key. Constant snacking throughout the day is where calories really rack up, because for one, quote unquote, snack food typically isn't too high in protein and fiber. Like cookies, little things here and there, crackers, those things are usually just higher in carbs, which aren't fattening on their own necessarily, but they aren't as filling usually. So snack foods aren't going to be the most filling foods, you know, unless you're really conscious about your snacks and like having, you know, some high protein, high fiber snacks on hand. So that's number 1. And number 2 is when you're eating just these small snacks constantly throughout the day, they never really help you to feel full. And so like you'll eat a snack that's a couple hundred calories, but then you still will feel hungry like an hour later. So sticking to just, here are my 3 meals a day, maybe slide in, one snack here and there if it is something you're really excited about. And that makes a huge difference. Tip number 3 is I really prioritized how I felt physically. I didn't want to feel like crap in Disney. I didn't want to eat like a huge amount of calories, a huge amount of fried food, and feel really sluggish and feel like my stomach was uncomfortable and feel like, I was burping up like grease and this and that, the whole trip. And this is a tip that I've been giving my clients a lot lately, and I'm really like bought into this tip, which is like, how is this meal going to make you feel? Are you going to be able to go for a walk or go for a hike or do something where you're moving your body and being, relatively active soon after? Or are you going to feel like, I just need to sit on the couch, let my stomach settle, or I'm going to feel uncomfortable and maybe even throw up, or maybe feel like you overly stuffed yourself? And if you stop to the point where you're like, okay, if we got up and we, did some walking for the next hour or two, and you would feel energized and not sluggish, and you stopped at that point of fullness, and also if you chose food options that helped you feel that way, like that would solve so many of people's problems with overeating, especially on vacation. Because I didn't want to choose like super greasy fried foods while I was there, because I knew we were going to be walking all day. Like when we went to that place with the rice bowl that had like beans, rice, lean meat, this and that, some veggies mixed in, I was pumped because I knew that meal was going to give me, the nutrients I needed to feel energized for the next, 4 or 5 hours of walking before our dinner. Versus if we were to go to some kind of stand that all they had was like fried chicken fingers and French fries, like sure, in the moment, maybe that would taste better, but I would feel 10 minutes later sluggish, tired, feeling like I just want to sit around, would be dragging, to my next meal. So really think about the foods that really help you to feel energized and gravitate towards those, which most people have the mindset of, I can't have fried foods, it's bad for me, or I can't have, a milkshake or this or that because it's bad for me and it's going to make me gain weight. Where instead, this other perspective that I'm describing is not thinking about the things you're cutting out because you can't have them because they're bad for you or they're going to make you gain weight or whatever. But instead, you're thinking about, what foods do I want to add in and actually include because they're going to make me feel good? So like lean meats, beans, rice, vegetables, fruit if you can grab it there. Lighter meals that are just lighter on your stomach. Like there was a day we went to this other place and they had like burgers, sandwiches, French fries, and I got a grilled chicken club sandwich, which was just like grilled chicken, cheese, I think some bacon on there, some lettuce, and onion, and then a side of French fries. And like it felt so good choosing the grilled chicken sandwich versus like a really fatty beef patty or like the chicken tenders. Like I felt so much more energized than what I would have felt eating the chicken tenders. And I know the difference personally because I grew up eating chicken tenders literally almost every single day. Like if you know my story, I didn't grow up eating healthier foods. I grew up eating a lot of fried foods like that. My mom would make me fried chicken tenders and French fries, like literally like deep fried in oil, quite often. And so I know how it feels to be on the other end, and I know how it feels to choose these options that, common sense things too, nothing like fancy, but just avoiding fried foods, having more like grilled foods like grilled chicken or grilled fish, or even a burger is a little bit better of an option than like deep fried chicken tenders because of all the extra oil and stuff that's just soaked into those chicken tenders. Limiting the French fries, not going overboard with that portion size that you do end up eating, and just feeling like lighter on your feet. Like if you can eat a meal, like I said, and feel like you can go for a hike or a walk for 4 to 5 hours and not feel sluggish and your stomach not feel uncomfortable, and you stop at that level of fullness too, you're going to put yourself in a good spot to maintain your weight. Because if you go to like 110% fullness and overly stuff yourself like a lot of people do on vacation, you're going to feel uncomfortable on that walk. But I try to visually think about me kind of filling up my stomach fuel tank to around like 75% full. So You can kind of describe this in two different ways. One way is I kind of describe to clients, okay, think about your fullness on a scale of 1 to 10, and 10 being completely stuffed. We want to be around a 6 or a 7, maybe a 7.5, to where you're satisfied, but you're not really like overly full. Like if somebody took your plate away and said, okay, you're not going to be able to eat for a few hours, you wouldn't be starving. But if somebody was like, hey, finish your plate, you also could finish, a good portion of your plate too. So you have some wiggle room in there. And visually, you can think about it as like a glass of water. And if you are eating to where you are like really stuffed and you can't eat anything else or you're going to feel uncomfortable, you're probably eating to where that glass of water is filled all the way to the top, if not maybe spilling over a little bit. Like there's some drips of water coming off the side of the cup. But you want to fill up that cup to where it's about 75% full, almost to where like you could actually walk around with that glass in your hand and not worry about spilling anything. So we want to aim for that 75% fullness at each meal. And that's going to probably put most people at maintenance calories. So you're not overeating, or, maybe even a little bit below that, which gives you some more wiggle room for like, some kind of snack for ice cream later if you want it. So I really prioritized how my body felt, and I wanted to fuel it with enough food so I felt energized, with the right food so I felt energized, but not too much to where I felt sluggish. Because bringing me to my fourth point is I knew we were going to stay active. And active or activity doesn't necessarily mean structured workouts. Like I didn't wake up at 5 a.m. and get some kind of workout in, some kind of body weight workout in before we left for the park. I could have, but I chose not to. I chose to take the week off, and I didn't track my steps every day, but I did like the first day before my ring died. And I think we were at like between 15,000 to 20,000 steps. So we were probably getting at least close to 15,000 steps every single day, if not on the high end, maybe even up to 20,000, which is plenty of activity. And when you are just moving around that much, even if you're not going for a run, even if you're not getting your heart rate up, even if you're not lifting heavy weights, you're still burning a lot of calories just constantly moving. So that's kind of my fourth tip, is stay active as much as you can. Something like Disney, or maybe even if you're traveling to a different country like Europe or somewhere where you're sightseeing a lot, like, and you're going to different like monuments and walking around a lot, taking tours, like you probably don't have to consciously think about your step count and walking too much. Like you're probably naturally going to walk a lot. But if you're going on like a more relaxing vacation where you're going on the beach, maybe doing some kind of walk like for 30 minutes, in the morning to start your day, walking along the beach, something peaceful, not something that feels like exercise. Like don't lock yourself in the gym that's at the resort and on the treadmill for 30 minutes just to walk. Like go walk on the beach. Or, if there are different shops at like the resort you're staying in, if it is something like, a beach vacation, go like just walk around the shops and look around at like the items there. Even if you're not buying anything, like sometimes it's fun to kind of see what they have to offer. But just the more movement you can get in, the better. And that's going to increase your calorie burn. So even if you do overeat a little bit, it's going to make it less likely you're going to overeat versus the amount of calories you're actually actively burning. So if you overeat more than what you typically eat on a normal week, but your calorie burn is up higher, it's going to create more of a gap, so you have more wiggle room. So that always helps too. And also, these two things kind of go hand in hand, where the more active you are, the more calories you burn. So even if you do eat more fried foods, it won't impact you as much. But also, being active and knowing you're going to be active psychologically makes you choose options that probably aren't as fried anyway, because you don't want to feel like crap moving around. And that kind of goes back to that last point I just made with prioritizing food sources and amounts that will make my body feel good. Because if you have to go walk for 4 hours straight after this meal, you're probably not going to eat something that's going to make you feel uncomfortably full. So they kind of go hand in hand, where like being more active gives you more leeway to eat higher calorie foods like fried foods because you're burning more, but also being more active kind of psychologically gets you to subconsciously not want to choose the fried foods as much because you know you're going to be moving around a lot and you don't want to feel terrible doing so. So they really kind of complement each other. And the fifth thing that I did while on vacation is, at minimum, I try to control my calories. Like I talked about this in the Thanksgiving video, but for one day, if your protein intake is significantly lower than what you typically eat on a daily basis, if for one day your water intake is way lower, if for one day your fruit and vegetable intake isn't where it needs to be, but you at least stay, keep your calories relatively controlled, close to the amount that you burn, you're not going to gain body fat on that day. And the same thing applies for an entire week too. Like I told myself, I know my protein's going to be lower than usual. I know I'm probably not going to get in as many fruits and vegetables as I normally do. I know my water intake is probably going to be a lot lower than normal because I'm not trying to drink, a gallon of water per day and have to go to the bathroom constantly at the park. I want to stay hydrated, but I don't want to overdo it. So I knew these things weren't going to be where they typically are. But if I at least control my calorie intake through the means of, my portion sizes, trying to choose less fried foods, realizing I don't need to finish my whole entire plate if I am at that 75% fullness mark, limiting snacks, focusing on just 3 main meals, all those things I just went over. If I at least control my calorie intake by that way, then I'm going to at least maintain my weight over this trip. Now, if I were to eat this way, low protein, not staying hydrated, not getting as many fruits and vegetables, if I were to eat this way for multiple weeks or months, I probably would end up not feeling great long term, and I probably would end up losing quite a bit of muscle, which is not what we want to do. So this isn't a long-term approach, but this approach of just kind of like realizing my protein's going to be short, all this stuff, my water intake isn't going to be where it's going to be, realizing that's okay for a week, and then getting back to checking off those boxes when you come back helps out a ton too. And realizing just the simplest form, if I can at least just maintain like a proper calorie intake for myself, then I'm going to maintain on my weight. So like it helps when you're out of your routine, out of your normal environment, to focus on just one key variable being your calorie intake, and just to keep things very simple, so you're not stressing about all these variables when you're gone. Like my protein intake normally when I'm home is usually around 200 grams of protein. I probably was getting about, I would say honestly, maybe 120 grams of protein in each day on vacation. So significantly less. And like I said, long term, I would end up losing some muscle also by not lifting weights for a week. I probably didn't lose much muscle just from a week of doing that, but if I were to do that for multiple weeks and months, I'd end up losing muscle too. So like I said, this kind of approach of, being okay with your protein being lower because it's going to keep your calories lower is a good short-term solution for a day on Thanksgiving, a good short-term solution for a weekend away, a good short-term solution for a week of vacation. But once you start doing this for a few weeks straight, then like I said, you're probably losing some muscle. You're probably losing some muscle because your protein intake and your lifting weights are just so much lower than usual. So you want to make sure you get back to that when you get back. But for a week, it's not going to really negatively impact your progress. And it's going to help you to just keep things simple and keep things easy for, if I can just at least be mindful of my portion sizes, all these things to keep my calorie intake around maintenance, then I'm going to be fine. So let's dive into kind of the last point, which is the conversation around how I gained a few pounds back, what this means, why this happened, and how I even lost 5 pounds anyway, 4 to 5 pounds, let's say, because that's a lot of weight. And like I said, probably only 1 pound of that, if not maybe a little bit more, was probably actually body fat. So there are a few reasons. Number one is that my water intake was a lot lower on vacation. So when you're drinking less water, initially, or when you're drinking less water, your body's going to hold on to a little bit less water. So like that whole week, my body was kind of like slowly not getting dehydrated to where like I was having any kind of clinical impact, like, oh my God, I need to drink more. But compared to me drinking almost a gallon per day, I probably was drinking about, like half a gallon per day, maybe even a little bit less potentially. So like if my body's always used to holding on to a gallon of water and then all of a sudden a week I drink, almost half of that, my body's going to hold on to less water. So that's one reason why the weight on the scale was down that much when I came back. And that's obviously not related to fat loss or fat gain. Another reason why is because my calorie intake and carb intake was probably a lot lower than usual, like at home. Like at home, I probably eat around, if I'm kind of referring back to, my food log, I probably eat around 350 to 400 grams of carbs per day to maintain my weight, along with like where my protein intake is and all this stuff. And I probably on vacation, because, I wasn't, super conscious of tracking my food and making sure I got enough calories. My carb intake was probably, I can't really give you a specific number, but it probably was maybe around like 250, like probably 100 grams lower than normal, maybe even a little bit more than 100 grams lower than normal. And when you eat carbs, you store water with every gram of carb that you store. So carbohydrates are stored in two places, your muscles and your liver. And when you store carbohydrates in those places, you store water with it. And that's kind of why carbohydrates have the name carbohydrate. So that's where that connection kind of comes into play. So for every gram of carbohydrates you store, I think it's around like 4-ish grams of water that you store too. So if I'm storing 150 grams of extra carbohydrate at home because I'm eating more, that's 150 times, let's say 4, so 600 grams of water extra I'm storing, which 600 grams of water is a little over half a kilogram if we're converting that, which is about a pound if I'm doing that conversion correctly, which I know it's somewhere around there. So that's about a pound, maybe even a little bit more than a pound of water that I probably lost just from eating a little bit less carbs that I then gained back once I came back from vacation and started eating my normal amount of carbs. And this is why when people do keto or they do low carb, they lose a lot of weight on the scale quickly, is because they're storing less carbs in their muscles and liver. So they're storing less water with those carbs. And then when they go back to the normal diet and their carbs go back up, they end up storing that extra water again. And this has nothing to do with any kind of differences in fat loss or fat gain. This is literally just water manipulation with the amount of carbs you're eating. So that's one reason why like the weight in the scale came down so much, like a pound, and then, came back a few pounds too, is the carb intake going down while I was gone and then coming back once I got back. Third reason why the weight in the scale changed so dramatically up and down was likely because of my creatine intake. So creatine monohydrate is a supplement you might have heard of, that a lot of like bodybuilders or fitness people promote intake. And I'm not going to get into the science behind creatine as far as like why it's beneficial, but super beneficial, especially if you lift weights. But there's a lot of research that has come out that it's super beneficial even if you don't lift weights for other forms of exercise. Also, there's a lot of cognitive benefits that they're finding out with it, even for people who are like elderly who don't exercise like much at all. So there's a ton of benefits regarding creatine monohydrate. Super safe too. One of the most researched supplements out there. If there's one supplement to take to improve your body composition, and now, like I said, even some cognitive benefits behind it, creatine monohydrate is like the one. Now it's not gonna like dramatically change your results, because any kind of supplement that's doing that in that extreme degree is likely like a banned substance like steroids that has a lot of negative side effects. But out of the supplements that do improve body composition, creatine monohydrate is like basically the number one out there. But I stopped taking creatine while I was gone a week away. And similar to carbs, with creatine, comes more water retention in your muscles too. Creatine is stored in your muscles, and with that comes some more water retention. So when I stopped taking it for a week, my creatine stores in my muscles likely came down, which then brought my water retention in my muscles down even more. And then when I came back and started taking creatine again, that upticked back up to normal. Like it's really normal for your weight on the scale, even just simply from creatine, to change by like a couple of pounds from taking it consistently versus not taking it consistently. So between my water intake, my creatine intake, and my carb intake, that probably explains why the weight on the scale came down that much, right? Like I said, probably a pound of it, if not maybe a little bit more than a pound of it, was actual body fat. But the scale weight came down 4 to 5 pounds. So that extra, like, let's say 3 to maybe 4 pounds was likely from my water intake being lower, being a little bit dehydrated relatively compared to what I'm normally hydrated at. Holding on to a little bit less water because my carbs were lower, holding on to a little bit less water because my lack of taking creatine while I was on my trip. And then all that stuff kind of got filled back up when I was gone. But now I'm around like 202-ish. And like I said, I was around 204, maybe even 205 before I left. I did have like, one weigh in this morning that was like 203. So I'm kind of fluctuating between 201 and 203 right now, but still down 1 to 2 pounds from before I left. So I still like had a really successful vacation with maintaining my weight, but also with losing some body fat, which is really good because, I'm competing in a powerlifting meet in a couple of months, actually less than a couple of months. And I have to be under a certain weight for my weight class. And this gets me a little bit closer to that, which is good. But all this to say, like you can certainly enjoy your vacation and just be mindful of those few things and still like even just maintain your weight, right? This was an example. I used all these tips and I actually lost a decent amount of weight, but so I could have been more flexible with my food intake, ate a little bit more, and perfectly maintained my weight too. I just think there's this overcomplication of, and this like mindset around, I'm going on vacation. I know I'm going to eat some junk food, so I'm going to gain a bunch of weight. So what's the point of being mindful? I'm just going to say screw it and, eat everything in sight. When like there's degrees to this, and like there's a big difference between saying screw it and eating everything and overly stuffing yourself and feeling like crap and coming back, weighing 5 pounds over versus like enjoying yourself, being mindful, feeling good after each meal, not like mentally and emotionally as far as I don't feel guilty because I made good choices, but physically feeling good after each meal or between each meal and coming back and realizing, I enjoyed the vacation. Like I didn't miss out on anything from these choices I made regarding my food. I still enjoyed the vacation to the fullest and came back and, at worst maintained my weight, but at best, still lost a couple of pounds. So hopefully this video was helpful to highlight, 5 simple tips, right? Prioritizing protein, limiting snacks, prioritize how you feel physically, staying active, and at minimum, just controlling your calorie intake, regardless of the other variables. Like those 5 things, if you do those 5 things at every trip, every weekend away, every family get together, every celebration, you are going to do wonders for maintaining your weight, if not still making progress. But also, I hope it kind of highlights too, just how big of an impact like these other variables, like when it comes to water retention, can make on your weight too. And that way you don't get like super freaked out about gaining a few pounds back when you come back. Like I said, with my situation, if I didn't have the knowledge I had, these first few days back where my weight did come back up to 202-ish, 203, I would be like, oh my God, like I'm really overeating. But I know the science behind it. I know why my weight was so down before and why, a majority of it I did gain back now that I've came back. And I know it's not related to like body fat loss or gain. So hopefully this kind of brought some clarity or, it was interesting to kind of learn about, the effects like your water intake, creatine, and carb intake can have just on your water retention too. So hopefully this was helpful. Appreciate you all. And I will see you guys in the next one.